What is up, world? Can you imagine? It's been 1 year since we go bust out this hat here. 1 year since the rant. And not much has changed. Got myself some AG1, I even went to the store and talked about what Monty talked about before, where you can't find the original trolleys, so you just get whatever is there. And
exactly.
That's fine doing it right now because they're not sponsoring us. So yeah, the peach rings are better than the sour bright crawlers. I said it. And you know what? Things haven't changed too much. NA, how many times we made it on through since the Swiss stage has been put in? Every time. How many times has Europe not been able to make it? Every time.
Well, that's because Switzerland is in Europe, and therefore Europeans deserve to only be in the Swiss stage, right?
That is one way to look at it. Obviously, we're all just tongue in cheek here. It is a very, very different feeling type of, I think, finish to the Swiss stage here. And we here at Power Spike will break it all on down. dGon alongside Monty and Dom. Once again, as we had an eventful but moderately predictable. Like, I think if you looked at the results, you'd been like, sure, whatever. Maybe Team Liquid makes it through instead of FlyQuest. But otherwise, everything kind of went according to what people expected.
I mean, just objectively based on seeding and results, there really were not any upsets.
Yeah.
In the second phase of the Swiss system. Like, it's basically all of the teams that you would expect to win actually ended up winning. Right.
Yeah. Well, we will get to the Swiss stage and all of that after more breaking news, because that's what we're doing now. Off-season is underway. Remember, for most of the teams, this is when GMs and owners start salivating and imagining what type of magical rosters they could put together, and it gets even spicier.
Illegally tampering with players.
Nobody
would ever do that.
No way. But the big news coming out of everything. So, spoiler, G2 lost, so they're out. And then immediately afterward, Sheep never sleeps and put out another banger. Yike and Mickey X on the trading block. So, Dom, you had a good tweet. You said, news generally travels fast. Must have been tough to play knowing your job's on the line. What do you make of this move here?
I mean, it's not even knowing your job is on the line, knowing that you most likely are losing your job. I mean, everyone knows that like Skewmond is this really hyped player, and then you just saw him who he was playing obviously for BDS, and he declined the BDS offer. And BDS is a team that was top 3 for the entire time. And obviously they're retaining most of the good parts of their roster. They have Nuck, they have Ice still there. The only real big loss is Lebrov. They're bringing in Irrelevant. So when you're declining that roster, it's like, what do you think the options are? And everyone was rumoring him to already go to G2. So I think that the hardest part is like, unless they made some miracle like semifinals run, and like not a fraudulent semifinals run where they got some like really easy draw for some reason, like a real semifinals run where they're looking good. I mean, the roster is just doomed to break up. So yeah, I mean, I think people forget like that 2 years is a super long time to have the same roster in esports. Like, this is almost unheard of to have a roster for like 2 full years. I mean, we had it with T1 obviously, which is the longest standing like roster in tier 1 play. But outside of that, it's like G2 2019, 2020, the ones that everyone remembers, like that only existed for 2 years. That was only a 2-year project. Sure, they had like so much success that it felt like very memorable. It was very impactful, but it was only a 2-year project. So if you don't get out of Swiss in 2 years, you're going to need to make changes. And I think it's the only way, because at this point, G2 just has higher ambitions. Like, people like Broken Blade, people like Caps, they don't give a fuck about winning Europe anymore. Like, it's nice to win Europe, but like if you saw their interviews after, when people are like, oh, but at least you guys won Europe every time, they're like, who gives a fuck? Like, who gives a fuck? For players of their caliber, they don't even, like, these are not even the old Fnatic G2 bangers where it felt like there was another really strong team that was pushing them. These are just like layups. It's like, oh, you get to play against this fraudulent ass Fnatic that's beating themselves. Like, no one feels good about that summer finals championship. No one said, oh yeah, we won summer finals where we were down 5K to 8K every single game, and then we 3-0'd them. Like, no one feels good about that on that roster. And I think this is what they need to do. And if you look at how the team has progressed, I think that there are actually a lot of things to look at within the team that have improved. Like, mainly Broken Blade actually looks now internationally good. Whereas before, he was always someone who was kind of playing the meta. You always had criticisms of, will he ever be able to play against these top tier players? And he laned versus a lot of top tier players and played well in those lanes. And he had a lot of effect in the game. It felt like this year he took a step to actually be free to be himself on the international stage, which is a huge thing because now you have two players, you have Caps and Broken Blade, that both have the ability to, at their peaks, compete with the top Asian players, which is pretty much what you're looking for when you have a roster like this G2 team. So
I think it started earlier for Broken Blade too, which was at MSI last year. Because in coming into MSI last year, everybody was saying, "Oh, Broken Blade is going to be the weak link," and it turned out he was maybe the best player on G2 at that specific tournament. So I feel like he stepped up, like you're saying, a while ago, over like a year and a half ago, and now he has this great versatility that we're seeing in the top lane. Some of the most memorable performances on G2. I mean, his Galio game was extremely good.
His
here in
Poppy game
stage.
versus Hanwha Life, they should have won that. Like, he was way more impactful than Doran throughout the game. The reason they lost was other areas. You look at the games that they played versus BLG. The Yasuo game was huge. When you think about the MSI run, the Yasuo game he played into Zeus was also huge. And those are situations where you look at those players, like, those are not easy games to win. Like, it is not easy to pull off Yasuo top in the main stage versus top laners that are that good. Like, they are very good at spacing, and being able to pull that off, I think it just gives them a lot of versatility. I mean, when you look at why the G2 roster are underperformed, I think Yike is clearly the first person to go, because he's like good at carrying the game. Like, he's good at being strong in the game, but he doesn't make good decisions throughout the game. And
his early pathing too is just wild sometimes, and like the plays that he decides to go for are just very bizarre.
He just looks lost. He just looks lost. Like, he's trying to, he looks like he's not one of those jugglers that's playing the way that he wants to play. It's more like he's just trying to do what his team wants him to do all the time. And, that's just a situation where you're always on the back foot. And when you look at teams that are actually performing, it always looks like the jungler is super confident in the plays that he's making and like doing what they want to do. It's a huge reason why when I think T1 is good, you see like a different level of Owner. Like, when T1 is good, Owner is like going places and getting shit done. And then when the play is over, he's basing, has tempo, goes on the other side of the map. Like, he's like playing his own game. Like, he sees the game and everyone is kind of playing around what he's capable of doing. And when T1 is bad, for example, like in LCK at the end of summer, when T1 is bad, it's like Owner is trying to put out a lot of fires. It's like, oh shit, Faker took a really bad trade like mid with Tristana or Corki or something. Now I have to like hover mid on this wave. Okay, I hovered, you got the wave, and now I'll go back clear a camp. They don't have tempo, you're behind. And in those types of games, players like Peanut will absolutely shit on you. Like, if you're playing those games where you lose tempo and you're just always on the back foot, a player like Peanut is going to completely gap you. So, yeah, I mean, I just think that Yike just doesn't fit the roster. And a lot of Yike's flaws were covered up by Mykles throughout the year. There was so many times where Yike is just off tempo. Like, he is, because the thing about jungle is you need to path correctly initially so that when you path the second time, your camps are spawning in the right order so that you can hit the timings that you need to hit. It's like your mistakes become evident as a jungler like 1 minute after you actually make the mistake a lot of the time, or maybe 2 minutes after you actually make the mistake in a pro game. So there's a lot of timings where he's just in the wrong spot, and Mykles is like ditching bot lane. He's the one that's actually creating the play, and he's covering the lanes that need to be covered, or diving on a timer that they need to dive on, or being in the right spot at the right time. So the dynamic was just really weird. It's like Mykles is playing like the jungler, but it's like a really fucking weak jungler because he's playing support. And then Yike is kind of just full clearing and trying to just become strong in the game and be like a carry. And that's just not what this G2 team needs. Like, they have competent carries. What they need is like a better system, and that is what they're changing. They're changing the system. They're changing the jungle support.
I'm just surprised that they're getting rid of Mickey, not because I think Mickey had an excellent year, but for me, like, if you are getting rid of this player who was, I think, very legitimately the MVP of LEC last year. I think he was the only candidate in 2023 for the MVP of that league. And sure, he definitely had bad times this year, but he had bad times at Worlds. Like, even in their last series versus BLG, he had a pretty terrible Rel game at first, was making super questionable.
Okay, my take on the Rel game is actually that Rel is impossible to play. Like, in that game.
Oh, okay.
Like,
okay.
I actually don't think that is like, I don't know what the fuck the point of the team comp is. I think they just got giga outdrafted that game. So a lot of people are looking at, like, they're like, oh yeah, he's not landing good rel combos, because you can't land a good rel combo because the enemy team doesn't have to ever stand on top of each other. Like, they're playing they're playing a comp, right? And if you look at what the comp is, they never have to be on the same screen. You have Jax on one side flanking, like you just stay in kind of like a wing formation, and you have Jax on one side, LeBlanc on the other side. Yep. You have Alistar and Skarner, who it doesn't matter if you combo them like that. Sure, they might be together, but if you combo them, they're just gonna fucking turn on you, and like everyone's gonna come in from the side. And Kai'Sa can stand wherever she wants because she has the ability to join a fight with ult. So I think they got just gig out drafted that game, and it's like people see Rel and they're like, they see like the Rel Delight combo mid, and they're like, oh yeah, I mean, why didn't he do that? It's like because they're never going to be in that position because the team doesn't ever have to. They're never going to be positioned like that. So I think that a lot of these times, like you have to try to look through the lens of the player and like what he's playing into. And if you think about what happened in that game for G2, one of the biggest mistakes is that they overly tunneled on the Ori Nocturne combo. Like they drafted Ori first pick, right? Enemy team goes Skarner, Jax. Why are you drafting Nocturne? Like Nocturne is terrible into Jax. Nocturne's not good into Skarner.
No.
You already have the Orianna. It's not like Ori's only playable with Nocturne. It's almost like the other way around where like Nocturne, you really want an Ori, but you can also supplement it with like a Nico or a Kennen or just other flankers. Like you can try to create a comp around Nocturne. But Ori is a champion that is just like a solid mid laner. Yeah. It just does what it does. So in that game, they needed to pivot, but they were so addicted to this Nocturne Ori combo. So what they end up is like a wombo combo team comp. MF, Rel, Nocturne, Orianna. They have a wombo combo team comp against a team that doesn't ever have to group up. When you go a wombo combo team comp, what you go that against is ball comps that want to be on top of each other. So ones with like, you know, like for example, like an enchanter and a tank where they're going to play structured front to back. They're going to be in like a pocket together all the time. So you're going to have these opportunities. But when you draft into something like this, like I don't know how the Rel is supposed to play the game. Like sure, he played bad, but like he's also lane countered. He's playing versus an Alistar. So it's like a Rel versus Alistar. Like that is a lane counter. And normally people are okay with it if the Rel provides value outside of lane, but the Rel doesn't provide value outside of lane this game as well. So it's like, how do you play that game? Like, actually, how do you play that game from support?
Yeah, to your point too. I mean, it's similar to the way that D+ was able to come back in the game in the first game versus Weibo, where they were playing LeBlanc, Lee Sin, where they basically just create the pocket, and then LeBlanc has the flank and Lee Sin has the flank. And you know, once Weibo walks into that, it's very, very difficult to play, and they engage with the Nocturne Ori. Right? Yeah. There's never the group up that you want, and there's a form of counter engage with D+. It was like Renata ult, right? And the reason why Skarner is good into Nocturne is because once you engage in that, you know, Skarner is one of the best kiting counter engage champions in the game with the way he functions right now, being able to push a target out with his E or just ult multiple people who are on the engage. So it also makes Skarner the very safe pick that we're seeing now. That's why part of the reason why we're seeing it raised so highly in terms of priority. It's because there's very little you can do about it. And dive is a huge, not only Nocturne Ori dive, but just like dive comps in general are very, very prevalent right now, and Skarner's just insanely good into all of that. But anyway,
coming back bring it back to the move.
Bring it back to Mickey X's defense. Like I think he did actually close out this series, especially his Rakan game was very good. And I think, yes, he has struggled more this year, but I am surprised you are getting rid of a player that has this level of veterancy and who has had this high of a ceiling, right? Yep. I do find it strange because
if I were to contextualize it, I think that it's because Mickey X was better outside of lane this year and he was worse in lane. And like what Han Summit is like a laning AD carry. So I assume what they're going to do is bring in a support like Lebrov, who is just purely better than Mickey X, like in the lane in the 2v2. And they're going to try to get a jungler. And it's very risky, obviously, because I mean, if it is Skewmon, he is a rookie, but somebody who can kind of lead the team from the jungle position so that the support can be a lane first focused player.
I don't know if I think that it actually activates G2's strengths on the international stage, though, because sure, they fall behind in some of these games, but also they are one of the teams that's best at like catching throws and playing from behind. So I'm not sure it actually takes their strengths. Now, the problem with G2 is that you can't run this roster back, right? You can't do it if you have higher ambitions. But I think the issue here is that by taking a rookie jungler and putting him in, no matter how promising, and by replacing some of the kind of like crazy alchemical magic that you have on the map with Mickey X, do you actually get yourself into a better position to contest at an international stage? Is my question. Because like getting rookies right now in what is probably like the twilight of Caps's career, feels like you might actually just accidentally, nuke the end of Caps's career.
Yes, but I mean, they've done this before when they moved on from Junkos to
Yeah, but that's the
Yike
whole
in
point.
first
Is it
place.
didn't accomplish the thing that they wanted to accomplish.
It
Did it?
It didn't. I guess it didn't, but like it. What more can you ask for domestically, right? Like I think domestically, and they got close. They almost beat BLG. They almost beat the tournament favorite. That was one of the closest matches, and I think that's why this whole Swiss stage feels so rough. It's because that was their game to win.
Yeah.
Game 3 was their game to win.
I mean, I think that a lot of the way that they perceive things, right? Like you have to view it through the lens of what they're actually going through day to day. Like they scrimmed, they released their scrims like they always do.
Yep.
And like, sure, they did end up going 1-2 versus BLG, but they got 9-0'd by BLG in practice. So like they probably throughout the tournament, it's not like last year where they had really high scrim win rate where they're like, oh, we feel like we're a really good team. We just weren't able to show up. They actually do feel like they are a worse team than these teams that are beating them. And maybe they're showing up on stage and kind of clutching it out and they're finding good opportunities and they're able to make it look like a 1-2. But if you look at how the BLG series went versus G2, it always felt like BLG is like playing the map the way they want to play. They're like creating like advantages from themselves that are just naturally happening. So when the game is static, it's like the Asian teams are winning, and then G2 would like make a play to like even it out or like bring it back, or even in game 2 completely swing it into their favor. And then like, BLG is still like creeping up. So it's like you're constantly losing, and then you're trying to just keep on making like outplays in order to, you just swing the game into your favor. And that's just not a good way to play. Like you just end up generally losing when you have to consistently do this versus top teams. And I think a lot of it isn't based off pure laning. It used to always feel like that because the laners just from the East were just so much better that you were just constantly losing lane. But now it feels like the laning is actually better, and it's more of these like team decisions. And one thing that G2 was really bad at the entire year, or at least one thing that was really evident to them when they started scrimming internationally, was how bad they were in lane swaps, right? Like that was something that they've said in interviews, is that their lane swaps weren't good. And if you see when they played against TL, they were losing like every game to TL as soon as TL landed, and over time they got better. And a lot of like coming up with these strategies when it comes to lane swaps, a lot of this is about timing on because your AD carry is just going to be slow stacking the wave. Your mid laner is just going to be mid. It's about like your support making the correct decision on like which lane to leech, or am I going to stay bot, or like you're going to go mid. It depends on where everyone starts in the game, and then the jungle hitting the timing together. And it's like if you're not able to play these lane swap situations, a lot of it is going to come down to like your jungle and support not being on the same page, because your jungle and support generally are the ones that should be like leading the lane swap. Like, the AD carry is doing his own thing, like stacking the wave, and then your support is like, hey, we're going to be diving on this wave. You can clear like one more camp and you can dive, and it's up to the jungler to like hit the timing. So, I just feel like they probably struggled with that for the majority of the year, and that's a reason for it. I also think in 2022 they were just a way different team, so the pieces that they needed were different. So I don't think that it's like, oh, you still had BB and Caps in 2022, so when you added this rookie jungler and then you brought back Mickey X and Hansama, like you had a different interpretation of who your players are. I think Broken Blade is a much different player now than he was in 2022. Absolutely. And that changes the type of pieces that you need now.
So it seems like the consensus is you get a lane-focused support. You get a jungler who is going to be a much bigger shot-calling voice and confident in what they want on the macro stage.
Mm-hmm.
Labrov is one. What are we thinking? All right, Labrov and the KC
Skumon.
Blue. Skumon.
Yep.
Is there anyone else? Are there other options there that come to mind? Because I'm not trying to nuke the segment by tilting you off the planet, but what more could an AD carry want from a support than a player who plays AD carry and maybe one of the best AD carries in the history of Europe?
Okay.
Got to meet up in Europe and be like, hey, Hans, you've been doing pretty good. I've been learning some things from the Korean way, and having Reckless come to G2. Okay, all right.
It's finally happening after all these years. He's not in prison from Fnatic and unable to go anymore. I mean, look, I don't know if that would like harsh the vibes of the team at all, but
it's not happening.
I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, unfortunately, like a lot of the theoretical transfers that you would want to see potentially, like Razork on this roster. Like he's in contract hell with Fnatic until 2026. So that's just not going to happen. Inspired is his real love is North America now, so he's not going anywhere.
That's right.
And so where do you go after that? Like, I just don't think they have an option at jungler, unfortunately for them, without paying a massive buyout to Fnatic, right? That is going to be good enough for them. And so maybe you take a swing at a rookie. But again, like, it's not about my concern is not that this can't work. My question is, on what timeline can it work? And is this the best thing? Because ultimately, G2 boils down to Caps. And if Caps is at the end of his career, if this is the last hurrah of Caps over the next 1 to 2 years, it's a gamble. It's a big gamble to put a rookie jungler in this position, right? It's a big gamble to eliminate some of the X factor that has been on your roster, the wild card tendencies that Mickey X has. Because you can think whatever you want about Mickey X, but factually, he is a massive meta disruptor at these tournaments. It was the Lissandra support last year. It was the Poppy support at MSI, right? He has really set the pace on a lot of these champions, and he has gotten a lot of wins with his weird champion pool and his kind of unconventional play style. And so my question is, does a more standard support player put G2 in a position where now they can like win a Worlds or be in a finals? And I don't know if that's true, right? Because it's not like the Asian teams are getting worse, guys. In fact, over the last couple of years, what we've seen the Asian teams do is just stack up super teams. Whether it was JDG last year or Genji this year, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard.
I mean, Weibo, like, even though they're 4th seed, like, they're effectively like a super team. Like, that is like what they're trying to build. Like, it's not like these players have some like inherent synergy. I mean, the way that it was built was like Xiaohu was the best pickup. Like, seeing Xiaohu originally off RNG just was crazy. It was like, what the fuck? This guy's no longer on RNG anymore. I mean, Tarzan, like, bringing him in, they just tried to get the best jungler possible. Breathe is somebody who peaked really high. And what I've noticed in LPL is if somebody has peaked high before, they generally will have more opportunities to like show themselves. It's kind of the same in LCK where players just that have shown really high levels will get more of a pass, where I feel like in the West it's like, oh, this guy's just shit now, like he's not worth it if you have like a bad year. The idea of bringing in that whole team, I mean, that is like a team that's not formed based off we're trying to get pieces that really fit what our team wants to do. The way that they're putting this team together is, what is the best player on paper that we can sign? Like, what player do we think is just the best player? They don't care about like fit, any of that. It's just, we just need the best player we can get.
Yeah, honestly, you look down all 4 teams on the LCK that made it to Worlds. You have to go to D+ and see, okay, they gave the shot to Lucid, and Lucid proved himself.
They still have 2 world champions.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, all 4 teams from the LCK, pretty stacked until you get to D+, where it's like, okay, well, here's our stacked players, and we'll give the chance to Lucid, and then Kellen / Moham.
So does Team Liquid technically, but I mean, it's a bit different.
That is.
Look, we don't have fraud alert this week, so I just gotta say, how fucking fraudulent is Kingen? Like, Kingen played so fucking bad. He was unrecognizable. He was unrecognizable at this Worlds. Like, what? Like, all the things that I thought.
You know what's funny, Dom, is he actually had a pretty good summer split too. So
but that's what I mean. It's like what I was
second half of the summer split. Like, he showed up as long as he showed up for the 2022 Worlds, and that wasn't
he third team All Pro?
Was he?
I think he was. Yeah,
gracious. Yeah, I think he was too.
I mean, look, they were in third. That's normally how you do it in the LCK. He was on the 3rd place team in regular season, so he's probably just 3rd team All Pro, right? That's just how it works.
He showed up during Gauntlet.
It's a fucking sin. It is a fucking sin to have critical thinking when it comes to LCK
All Pro was Genji. Second All Pro team was HLA, which we know is true because obviously, like, Genji won the finals. All Genji players won the finals.
That's why I didn't even watch the finals of Hanwha Life versus Genji, because I knew that it was just a wrap for Genji, because they're like, how could Hanwha Life ever win? They're outclassed in every single position.
and third All Pro team was Kingen, Owner, BDD, Aiming, and Carrier. It was Kingen.
Nice.
That was a nice mix. Did you guys just hear like tires spinning out?
That's outside my window.
Okay, I wasn't sure. It was
I-
like
just street racing in Incheon.
it took me a second because Monty lives in a pretty like nice secured area, and then I was like, is it me?
No,
I live
there.
next to school.
I don't
Dom
know,
lives
man.
in like, a private area. Like
There are an inordinate amount of like McLarens where I am, so God only knows what's going on out there.
Jesus.
Monty's in the hood. All right. Well, let us know in the chat for our friends watching. Let us know who you want to see in those 2 slots here for G2, as it looks like. And again, they can always resign. You can always resign. G2 has the luxury of being the biggest and the best in the West, right? Like,
No, they can't
obviously,
resign. You mean like resign Mickey X and Yike?
They could resign Mickey X.
No,
maybe not
they
Yike.
can't. You cannot resign players after you let them explore buyout. No, like that is like you're cutting them from the team. Like it
All
just
right.
is what it is.
Well, let us know who you want to see there for G2 next split. Not done yet with the news and notes. This one coming straight from the source's tweets, because he's a zoomer and just tweets shit. Jojopyun, after being booted unceremoniously by Cloud9, of course, discovered by one of the greatest journalists of all time. That was leaked here by some brilliant, was it investigative journalist? Jojopyun tweeting out a couple of cryptic tweets. He tweeted out the Kobe
Were
and
they
Shaq.
cryptic?
Yeah,
He
they were
tweeted out a
cryptic.
Spanish flag. How cryptic can you be? That's
Who is he doing the Kobe and Shaq thing with? When I think Jojopyun, Kobe and Shaq, that's Jojopyun and Inspired still in the tournament. He's not Spanish. They're not in Spain. He's in France right now with the rest of FlyQuest. Yeah, Jojopyun tweeting out a couple things here. What do you make of that, Monty?
I mean, he's going to Mad Lions Koi's. But by the way, just as an aside, has there been a North American player, and Destiny doesn't count, even though he was an NA resident because he was Australian? Has there been a Canadian or American who has actually played in the LEC?
Nope.
So this is the first time, because Double Lift never did it, because he actually never cared about winning. So there was a time when that could have been true. But that is actually amazing that we're over a decade into EULCS/LEC, and we've never had a North American import to Europe before. That's wild.
Yep.
I don't think there's been a talent worth going, other than maybe who else? It'd be Double Lift and who? Like, who else could have gone over there at that time? That is NA, not Bjergsen, obviously. Like Bjergsen, we claim him, but he already played there. Like, I can't
There weren't
think
that
of
many
any.
names.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not that would have actually been on like a top tier roster or anything like that. I'm sure there are lots of players that could have gone and been in the bottom half of the league, but not anything that would have been really notable.
Well,
Not any of the stars.
When I got banned originally, I was like, "Is this for NA LCS only in season 3?" And they're like, "Yes." And then I was like, "Okay." So then I started sending feelers out to EU teams, and as soon as like that went to right, they're like, "No, you're banned actually globally." It's like, "Oh, okay." So that was something that I investigated shortly.
Classic Riot. How do you feel like this changes Mad Lions Koi, Dom? Assuming that Jojopyun's issues or his style, let's say, is cleared up.
I'm not sure he would actually go there, but I think it would be a great pickup for them. Like, I think that they just need a mid laner who's competent in his own right, as opposed to having some liability where it's like we're hoping that, the right meta hits and he can play roaming champs. Because the thing about Frescowy is his identity of being somebody who's like good at supporting bot lane, for example, was something that wasn't able to be realized the entire year. It's like none of the champions that were about roaming to bot lane were like, we didn't have a TF meta, a Galio meta, we didn't have anything where he was able to even show what he's good at. Like Lissandra was a Frescowy champ. These champs are just were not good this entire year, or not meta this entire year. So it's like you're hoping that you hit that meta so that you can really unlock him, and you just never do. And it's actually the worst possible meta for him, the AD carry mid meta, where there were games where he ended up being effective, but he was always giga fraudulent in that meta. Even in the games where he's super fed on like Tristana and other things, he's just not comfortable auto attacking. He doesn't have the presence that a really talented like AD mid player has. So I don't know. He's just not it, bro. Frescowy's just not it. He's just a fraud. It is what it is. It's just
There is no fraud. There is no fraud alert this week. Dom.
I mean, he's
There's a
also
lot of
not a
fraud,
fraud because he was never. Was he ever hyped? Was he ever pretending to be good? He was just always Frescowy.
Mad Lions fans made it seem like that. It made it seem like it was a ridiculous take because in the beginning of the year, part of the reason why I thought the team would fail is I just don't rate Frescowy as a player. I just don't think he's good, right? So like that was one of my main reasons was I didn't think they would have the carry threat to get them over the line. And it's like at the end of the day, it's like was I really wrong about that? Sure, they made Worlds, but they were 40% win. They were a 40% win rate team that ended up making Worlds through like the fucking grace of God and BDS just benching Adam and like a bunch of bullshit like this. Like, and they bomb out to GAM. It's like, am I supposed to be impressed? Am I supposed to watch this and be like, oh wow, they really proved everyone wrong when they were just getting their ass beat by Levi and Kiaya? The other three players on the roster don't even count. It's literally just Levi and Kiaya 2v5 them live on the stage, and I'm supposed to pretend like Mad Lions actually had a good year. Nice.
And because Adam did the Adam thing, that was allowed to happen, which then paved the way for FlyQuest versus Team Liquid. Just gonna put all that out there. It all goes back to Adam in the end.
Look, one thing I want to say before we get deeper into the show. The only team that actually had a really bad draw was G2 from the LEC. The other LEC teams had really fucking good draws. Think about Mad Lions. Mad Lions is a play-in team, and they drew double play-in team. How fucking crazy is that? They're a play-ins team, and they drew PSG into GAM. Like that is by definition one of the
team that they beat in
play-ins
as well.
Yeah, and that was and they just got fucking just rolled by both of them. So the idea that LEC had a very hard path. It's like, no. G2 had a hard path. LEC just is garbage. And that's part of the reason why G2 can't improve past the point is they're just never pressured. I was going through games yesterday and I was looking at like how many times teams just like soft FF versus G2 when they get behind. They just take a fight that they can never win without item spikes. Like they don't play disciplined at all. And you compare that to how G2 was played against by like Hanwha Life, by how they were played against by BLG, even Weibo in the game they won. There's so much more resistance from these teams. These teams are just disciplined to not just randomly int the game. It's not like, oh, well, we were losing from early game anyway, so we're just going to fucking run into you. Or when like G2's 9k gold behind and Razork is just like inting, instead of taking a 3v5 with like the fucking insanely fed Redacted in front and you're like Lucian and your brand fighting together. After Noah gets caught, they just have like one guy get picked, the other guy get picked, and then like the game ends in like 5 minutes after that. It's like, wait, what the fuck? How did you lose the whole game off of it? Like, how did you lose everything? Like, okay, you defend your turrets, you're 9k gold up. It's not like the game is just instantly over. But all these teams, they just give it to G2 all the time. So that was my main take. Is I was just blaming the other LEC teams. Like so many LEC teams, I just fucking hated watching them throughout most of the year. That's the main reason why I'm not covering the LEC next year. Is like Giant X versus Rogue. I will kill myself if I have to watch another Rogue versus Giant X game. Like I will not make it, bro. I will not. I cannot watch another Rogue versus Giant X game. I'm telling you.
LEC GMs have made Dom suicidal. This is your fault, LEC general managers.
Yes. Yes. Jesus, bro. Like it is so fucking hard to watch, man. It is so hard to watch Rogue versus Giant. There's just nothing. Like you look at the games and there's no enthusiasm or anything. It's like Jackie says something. I like Jackie's. Everyone else, it's just like, just fuck off. Like, why am I having to watch this shit? There's no desperation, bro. I want these players to be like fighting like their lives are on the line. Even when you watch dog shit teams in the East, like Nongshim, even when they're eliminated, you're like, Fisher's still trying, bro. Like he's bad, but he's still like, he's got that grit. Like he's playing like his life is on the line. Whereas like these other teams are like, oh, nice. We got eliminated in July. Yeah, we got a little 5-month vacation. I guess I'll take like 3 months off. And then maybe I'll play like Champions Queue like 1 month before scrims. And then we'll start scrims. Like it's so pathetic to me. I just like hate the approach that I see. So yeah, for me, man, it's like, I can't watch half the teams in LEC. There's so many teams that are just unwatchable to me. Like Heretics, Rogue, Giant X. I couldn't stand watching those teams. Those teams were so hard to fucking watch. Then you have teams that are just like way worse than you think they should be. There's like SK. KC was pretty unwatchable for the entire year. Mad Lions was bad for like the majority of the year where they were just unwatchable too. Just inting every single fucking mid game. It's like, where is the resistance for G2? How are they going to get better when you don't have resistance? Like that's the thing that makes you get better is when you feel that resistance in game, you're like, okay, how do we close this out in a more optimal fashion? But when G2's playing domestically, it's so hard to diagnose where potential resistance could be when it's never coming. Like everything they do just works.
Now, G2 general manager and management team also you could be responsible for this as well. Make the right choice. As it seems like Jojopyun is now in Europe, and we'll see what happens there with them in the future. All right. Any other future moves or things that come out, we will cover it here on Power Spike. So those are the two big pieces of news, the G2 moves and Jojopyun with the cryptic tweets. Monty.
I will add just one more thing. Like if Jojo is able to do and say these things, not because I think there's tampering involved, but because his contract was literally removed from the contract database. So I think he actually, because of whatever happened with Cloud9, was made into a free agent. So his contract was terminated. And so therefore, I believe he is a free agent and like capable of signing a new deal immediately. So it's not, I don't think like Ibai's out there in the Burks hot tub with him, as it were.
Yeah. No, that level of tampering, the Perks hot tub. That's it's a
classic.
Go search that if you haven't already. If you haven't seen it, that's a good piece of I guess free agent mania history. Okay. Well, with that, we're going to get ourselves into the Swiss stage. But before we do, it's time to remind you of one of our friends here making Power Spike go. And it's our friends over at Turtle Beach. You know what, Monty? It took a little while, but I got him. I have my headset here. Again, this episode of Power Spike is brought to you by Turtle Beach, the #1 brand in gaming headsets and accessories. Their new Gen 3 Stealth 600 headset picks up so much crystal clear sound. I was a little worried about the sound quality. Again, moving from where I was at before to now, I knew I wanted something that was wireless, and it's been awesome so far using this Turtle Beach so far, as it is a 80-hour battery life.
It actually is crazy.
I again, that's very irresponsible of you if you don't charge it for 80 hours, but an 80-hour battery life here for the Stealth 600 headset, and it has quick charge, so you don't even really have to think about it. You just got to remember once every 80 hours of gaming. I don't know how long that would actually be in like gaming. How many days? Like what? 2 weeks? 3 weeks?
It's 1 week of Dom streaming.
That's true.
Which is actually just a testament to the battery life. And I have mine here. The reason why I'm not wearing mine is because there's something called side tone, which means that you can hear yourself in your headset. So while I'm streaming on these shows, it's very hard if I can't hear myself, because actually the noise isolation on these is very good. But when I'm not streaming, guys, I have been using these all the time. They're super sick because they can use both the USB wireless as well as Bluetooth, and you can just change it with one button. So I've been using it on my consoles, Switch, PS5, these kind of things, on my PC where it's plugged in via USB. Sounds great. And also, in addition to the 600s, they actually released the next model up on these, which is the 700 Gen 3 just came out. I will receive shortly the Atlas Air, which is their open back that actually does have a wired connection. It is a wireless headset, but it has a wired audio connection, so I can use them and actually hear myself, when I'm doing shows. So I'm excited about that. Plus they have they bought Rocket, so they have keyboards, mice, flight sticks, if you're a huge
driving simulator.
Yeah, if you're really into the F1 video games, they've got driving wheels. They got crazy shit.
Yeah, well, we got you covered here. Again, Monty approved. Turtle Beach has the right headset for you. For limited time only, our listeners get 10% off their entire order. Again, their entire order by using the code SPIKE at turtlebeach.com. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com with the promo code SPIKE. Thank you to our friends over at Turtle Beach for making it happen. And yes, the headset I have right here, it's nice and fit. You can slide it down and it activates, and you close it, it turns off by itself. So great headset. Thank you so much to Turtle Beach for making it happen. One more time, get the ultimate immersive gaming experience by Turtle Beach today. For a limited time, head on over to turtlebeach.com and use the code SPIKE for 10% off your entire order. You'll appreciate it. We'll appreciate it. Again, thanks to our friends over at Turtle Beach. All right. So with that, let's head on over to the next segment that we have here, and it's a little bit of high key, low key, no key, and we've had multiple teams eliminated from the tournament, but which ones do we wish made quarters? A little high key, low key, no key. Let's get into it. All right, let's start from the bottom. Who are we no key? So almost like, who are we excited that got eliminated and are making it out.
D plus Kia. I fucking hate this team. It was tragic that it felt like there wasn't really a good 4th place contender from the LCK this year, because I would have felt exactly the same about KT. I hate both of these teams. They have no macro. Moham comes in and he just sends it, I guess, with nerves.
Just terrible. He's just terrible.
He didn't look that bad domestically a lot of times, but even on some of his things,
I thought he looked bad domestically. I think that he was kind of like a rel one trick. Like that's kind of how I saw him.
But even in his last rel game, his last game of Worlds was also terrible. I mean, his Nautilus game, we got treated by watching him hook into a wall, miss everybody, and then flash out. And then hook in again and miss everybody a second time. That was a fun one. They're playing up against Weibo. I got to see him play Renata Glass, which was the only time in my life I think I've missed Kellen, considering that was the one champion that he could play somewhat competently.
Well, I just don't know what Moham gives the team over Kellen. Like, what is the advantage of having Moham?
Conundrum, okay? They have no shot calling, so they keep trying to fix it with Bible and now Moham, but there is no shot caller.
But they still have the same exact problems. You can literally just watch the games and it's like, wow, they really suck at playing the map. And that's why, like, I don't know. I mean,
I'm not saying it's fixed it. I'm telling you why this is happening.
But it's like clear it just wasn't working like the entire time. Like they didn't look like they had good shot calling even in the LCK. Nope. It was just like, oh, Moham got some nice rel engages. Cool. Like he's a good player now, I guess.
Maybe Kellen just gave up on the roster.
Mean, who knows? Kellen had the Kellint nickname, and that was just, I think it was kind of like perception. I think it was both perception, and obviously we don't know how it changed the dynamics of the team, or if it was shot calling or decisiveness or indecisiveness from the side of Kellen because of the type of champions that Moham plays. Moham was known as the engaged
Kellen's just a very quiet player is the problem, is that he doesn't really contribute to comms, and you can't have the old silent support. You can't pull a Targamas, that's not something that works really. So I think D+ has been just kind of fishing around for a better option. They haven't had an upgrade. They still haven't found that shot caller. But I just can't. I mean, Aiming, I think, had a pretty good tournament overall, but that was about it. Kingen performed much worse than he did towards the end of summer. This team is just absolute misery to watch. So I am very glad. So no key on them. Obviously, I'm sorry, guys. I love Maple. I love Levi. It's the end of their careers. I don't really care that Gab and PSG got eliminated.
Is it the end of Maple's career? Like, I mean, I know that they say that he's like retiring at the end of every year. Like, it just feels like that wasn't that the narrative last year too. I mean,
Maple's seemed more likely than Levi's. The whole GAM like Last Dance thing, that was the Last Dance for the VCS. I don't think that was clarified as much.
Are they banning the other half of the league now for match fixing?
No, you can't. You cannot ban Levi. Like if Levi gets banned, he never cheated. He never he doesn't know what gambling is. Like that. That's how that works. If that happens, that whole region's that's too much of the player base.
What does GAM stand for? Because it's not Gigabyte Marines. It's just gambling. Is that what the
gambling?
Is that the acronym?
Interestingly, they were not the ones. They didn't get hit by that. So
wait, didn't they?
Yes, they did. They did.
Little bit.
It was like two or three of the players.
Wasn't it like
Easy Love got his shot because I think the AD carry got banned.
Oh, that's right.
Wait, now I gotta go look it up because I don't want to spread lies here.
Match fixing. What would it be? What would be the punishments? I guess.
Or the bans. It was a large list of players.
Big Koro. That was their. Was that who it was?
That's right. Yes. That was their bot later.
Remember, because it was Koro Big, or was it Big? Yeah, Big Koro got banned. Oh gosh.
Yeah. The mid and the bot got banned.
Right there you go. That's why we have Emo and Easy Love. All right, fair enough. I do remember Big Koro, so yeah, he is no longer there. And Easy Love was in fact the worst ADC at this tournament. So
apparently they had a different guy who was named Pai Shiro was the guy who got banned from GAM, their bot laner.
Oh, I don't remember. I thought it was Big Koro. But either way, yes. So all this to say that despite the trials and tribulations it took for Levi to get here, Monty is heartless and does not care about that.
Well, my no keys are D+, Fnatic for obvious reasons as well. The same reasons as D+. It's just painful to watch this team. I can't do it any longer. GAM, PSG Talent. I'll put PSG Talent low key, so we'll save that one. Mad Lions, Koi, and Pain Gaming, all no key, all deserved eliminations.
So Big Cora was a coach who started playing bot lane when they got banned.
That's
That's
right. I remember that.
Yeah.
And then he went back to being a coach afterwards.
Got it. All right. That's the list there for Monty. Who you got? No key, Dom. Where do you agree, or is you
Mad
disagree with
Lions.
some of them?
Just Mad
Lions. I'm happy they got eliminated. I'm happy that they were just as pathetic as possible in the Swiss stage, just losing to double play-ins teams. Like, damn, you guys are just the straight up worst team in the tournament, bro. You probably would have lost the Pain as well. Just a terrible team. They went out in the most disgusting fashion with Frescawi Yone. Like, it just was horrible to watch. And yeah, I gotta say, it looked pretty deserved. I must say, it looked pretty deserved. And then the hardest part for me is this hearing like afterwards, like you lose to GAM, and then like the players come out and they're like honestly, like we just needed to change our style because we realized like it doesn't matter if we like get out of Swiss or like win quarters, like make it semis, whatever. Like the whole goal is to win the tournament. So like we had to completely adapt our play style in order to win the tournament. And you know, we just weren't that good at it, and we had some flaws. It's like I just don't buy it for a fuck. It's like, oh, so you guys, I'm sure you guys were really good. You guys were going to like get out of Swiss, but you just lost like a couple places because you changed your playstyle. Like, what was the playstyle change? What was the playstyle change? Just like Frescawi just playing Yone and running it down. Was that the playstyle change? Was that like the like they lost the way that they always lose? Like that's the thing that was so weird to me is they lost the way they always lose, but then they made it seem like no, we're playing way different. Like you just can't see it as a viewer. What the fuck? Aren't you guys just shit? Like, isn't that actually what happened? I'm pretty sure they're just shit.
Well, a lot of learnings for them. I think for me, it was PSG. I'm actually, which not because of them, like as players, but it's because that's a slot, right? That's a slot that NA theoretically could have lost at 1-1 when they played FlyQuest. That's it. Because if they lose, then FlyQuest plays BLG or whatever the fuck that happens, and maybe there's no teams from NA that makes it on out. So I think seeing PSG lose there, knowing that they had been a thorn in North America's side all year long, and knowing that they're a good team, I was like, okay, like
yeah, I hate
they got
teams from the region that has historically outperformed NA gets eliminated. That really sucks.
Yeah.
Historically outperformed NA. What history are you reading off of?
What? Taiwan, the Taiwanese region has
TPA.
TPA
in terms
won
of
Worlds. Oh, Flash Wolves, hell yeah! Flash Wolves has much more meaningful wins against Korean teams.
I mean, what about after that? What about like 2018, 2019? Like there's a reason why they were demoted to a minor region, because the region literally was just getting outperformed by NA consistently.
Yeah, but not this year. This year they looked pretty dangerous, and so I'm glad that they got knocked out.
I mean, they lost the FlyQuest. Like, I don't know. Like, I guess they beat 100 Thieves. Nice. Their 1 seed can beat our 3 seed. Nice.
Yep. Let's move to Loki. All right. Who's a team? This is where it's like, dang, this team could have gotten in, and I think it would have been all right. Dom, you go first.
TL. I think TL played horrible at this tournament, so it's like they were unrecognizable to me. But at the same time, it's kind of sad that in my opinion, the best team that we've had from NA in like years just looked so flat. They just looked so bad, because who knows what it's going to be like next year. It feels like there's almost never the amount of hope I had like midsummer, like after EWC and when TL came back to LCS. The amount of hope I had for the roster back then is a level of hope I haven't had for NA going internationally since like 2019, maybe like around then. And yeah, they just came out and they showed nothing. Like they were just so pathetic at this international. Like the fact that they even lost the flag was like that game one, you have 6 scrubs, 2 Drakes, Herald, 4K gold lead. Like, yeah. I mean, I don't know. They were just bad. They just weren't able to win the game. I think UmTi is like, he's so hard for me to watch. I hate watching UmTi play. Like he's just such a throw. He's just somebody to me he's just too much of a loser. That's what I said on stream. He's just too much of a loser. Like he's just lost for so much that he just doesn't know how to like win. Like he doesn't have the grit to win. Like the thing is, like when you're on a team that perpetually loses and there's no expectations, like you don't know how to deal with the stress of being the favorite and like being expected to win and having expectations. Like you just don't have that whole side of it. So for me, it's like it's almost like he's a rookie in that regard, where it's like this is the first year he's actually had some expectations where he's supposed to win, and he pretty much failed at every single point when it came to performance where he was expected to be better. Like you think about why they lost to T1 in MSI. UmTi was like griefing, right? Like UmTi was griefing those games. Yeon performed well. APA was performing well in those games. It was like, oh shit, TL can do it, and then UmTi's just running it. EWC, same thing. Finals, same thing. This World Championship, same thing. It's like, it's a consistent thing. Like he's literally underperformed every single time that he was supposed to clutch up and like break through with his team. And sure, like other people are not playing great. I'm not saying it's like all on him, but he has been a consistent issue in every single timing where they need their jungler to play well.
I will also say that Pioshik, even though I hate Pioshik, he was more clutch for TL in big matches. If you think about his like crazy Lee Sin performance at last Worlds versus T1.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, Pioshik was just better. Oh my god, I hate to say it. Pioshik was just better.
Clip it. Oh, do you feel like? Because I agree to an extent with you here, Dom, on two things. Like one, winning breeds more winning, and losing makes it much more harder to breed a culture of winning. I think you get a lot of learning lessons, but then getting used to winning, I think, is very difficult. So maybe from that point of view with UmTi, you said you kind of treat him like a rookie into winning and being an NA. Do you give him more time? Like if
they're going to give him more time. I'm pretty sure they're going to give him more time. Like for everything that they've said. I mean, I did an interview with Spawn last week. He said that it's a 2-year project. So normally it looks like you're giving him more time, but I don't know. It's just like he jokes about it. He's like, I'm a 40% career win rate player. I'm like, damn, bro. Like that's a lot of losing. Like, is that like? I don't know if I want the guy that's like, I am just very comfortable losing. I've done a lot of it.
What being in bro prison does to a motherfucker.
Yep.
To be honest, Tom, I'm actually shocked. His career win rate is 40%.
Yeah, I thought
it's
it was
pretty high.
I thought it'd be like 35 mid like max.
But Team Liquid, look, I think people. If you say like based on form at this tournament, they're obviously no key, but I think why they're low key for me is that we just expected more out of this team. Like finally we had from NA this roster that looked like it was going to be really exciting from a macro perspective. They were outplaying people, top Asian teams on the map a lot of the time. It felt like the meta was just like falling into their favor. We got an impact MVP, which a regular season MVP, which has been a rarity, and we got to see him in a lot of carry champions and feel like he was really dominating. So for that to fall away at Worlds, where all of a sudden Impact is struggling and we see UmTi having problems and
APA is dying all the time.
APA is just randomly dying or like flashing into the enemy team as Syndra. It felt like they didn't know how to play their compositions. Maybe the meta had shifted away from APA, and you were left with Yun, who I think still had a pretty good performance at this Worlds, but it felt like a lot of the strengths that we liked about Team Liquid were just didn't show up here. And so as a result of that, like for me, the low key is more about what could have been and not what we actually saw, which is that, they deserve to get their ass kicked.
Yeah. And I think you just agree with that. That seems to be the sentiment everywhere, right? On tweets, talking to people, watch the dive. They said the same thing. Like hope in terms of hands, in terms of macro that we haven't seen in North America for such a long time. It's always been great to see dominant North American teams be dominant, but we've learned our lessons from sending Double Lift all these different times on different teams. We've learned our lesson.
All you gotta say about it is like, do we really need to call in the epic coach speech and then put it on social media for fucking Team Liquid versus GAM? It's like, this isn't where we want the speech, guys.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like Like Spawn had to like have the epic speech to even get them to beat Gam. That's how pathetic it was. It was like they're gonna go out to fucking Gam because the team is so shot mentally. Like you just look at all the players, they're hanging their heads down. I don't know. And like even just like the way they played was so fucking lazy. Like the bot dive where UmTi just dies in a 4v1 versus Jax, where the Jax already has E. He just like plays it in the only way.
That was one of the
where
worst
I'm like,
Maokai games I've ever seen.
yeah, I was like, God damn, like I mean, when I said to my chat, it's like maybe I just need to unretire. Like maybe that's the only angle. I just have to unretire because like
I mean,
I'm never doing
Maokai is
like,
not that difficult mechanically, but the amount of shit. I mean, even especially his ults that game too. Later, we'll get into it. Well, his ults were terrible, but that dive where he just like can't figure out how to like drop aggro or just wait for Counter-Strike to go away. I don't know. A million options there, really.
I mean, it's a 4v1 dive. It's literally a 4v1 dive, and there's no pressure. It's not like there's a time constraint or anything. It's like you have all the time in the world
They
to
had
figure
a
out how to
ward
4v1
in the
dive.
late rush as well to see if the support was coming. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, they literally just saw the support. Like,
All right. As you guys alluded to,
bro. It is what it is.
As you alluded to, we're gonna talk about this more, chat. So hopefully we got some salty NA fans here, not just some salty EU fans.
You know what I think dGon. I think like probably what's going on right now is that the U.S. military is calling Spawn and trying to get him in a time machine back to the 70s, man, so he gives some speeches then.
Oh, jeez.
Jesus.
Like that was pretty. Also, just the way that transpired was so interesting. I was like, why is there a camera on at this angle right here, and you can pick up what he's saying, you know, really well, like in terms of piece of media or propaganda if he's going back in the 70s. And then they like posted it really quickly, and then the broadcast picked it up and played it. I was like, wow, this was like
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like that felt very synchronized and maybe planned. I don't know, not planned, obviously not planned. And I know Spawn had nothing to do with it. He's just talking to his players, but that seemed pretty fishy to me. I don't know. That seemed pretty cool. So that's our low-key pick. Who are we high-key pick missing? Who would we have liked to have seen in the
G2?
Really yeah, G2. The only team I really cared about seeing in the next stage was G2. Like I said going in, there's only 7 teams I wanted to see in bracket stage, and those teams were G2, BLG, Top Esports, T1, Hanwha Life, Genji, and TL.
Yeah,
those are the teams I wanted to see. 5-7. I don't give a fuck about anyone else. Like I didn't need to see LNG. I don't need to see Weibo. I don't need to see Dom1. Like those are the only teams I wanted to see. But it is what it is. Turns out they just got unlucky. They got an unlucky draw, and the other teams from Europe are just terrible. So what can you do?
What did you make of the game 3? How tense it was, the pause, the Callista rend, like all that stuff.
The game was, I mean, number one, like I don't know why it's so fucking weird to see BLG get blamed for the pause. Like I saw so many comments on social media. I saw so many comments like, oh, well, it's just China rigging the game again because don't you know it's a Chinese company? I saw so many of these. And it's like, what can BLG do if the other team pauses when it's just not a bug? Like I don't understand what the fucking argument is. It's like, yeah, like so Hansama paused, BLG didn't pause, Hansama paused, and there just was no bug. So it was just completely fair. He rendered the Silas, didn't end up killing the Rumble, and then Elk just carried the fight. And at that point, the game is like effectively over because of the timing where he was able to kill Xin Zhao, because Xin Zhao died later on into the fight, and Hans died later into the fight. Or yeah, was it Hans that died? Whoever died, it was like maybe AD, maybe it was top lane, whatever. As soon as those people die, they have the window to get the free Baron. So they have free Baron, and there's like no way really for G2 to engage on the enemy team. So they're kind of just fucked at that point. I don't think that there's anything where it's like, oh, the momentum just shifted. It's like, no, the game was over effectively. Yeah. The game was like, that is the game deciding fight in the middle of mid lane. And that's the one that gets you Baron. And then BLG is just going to play it out with the Baron. And they have like 5-6K gold lead.
Yeah. And the issue with G2's composition too is that, and part of this was the fact that they failed to do that Baron early, because I understand it, they didn't think Rumble had TP, which is a pretty astounding mistake to make in that circumstance. But if you are running, you know, Renekton, Xin Zhao, Ryze, Callista, Taric, it is very difficult for you to play against a Baron buff because you can't clear waves very effectively with this composition. Like
The game's
walking
just
up,
over, bro. Like the game's just over.
walking up with a Rise and a Callista isn't an option. Like if
Oh.
you are G2, you actually just cannot give up that Baron buff because they will take everything.
Yeah, and
Right.
the biggest problem is that there's different phases to the game, right? In the early mid game, Ezreal doesn't do enough damage where you actually feel like he's a main threat. But at that point in the game, BLG has the tools to engage, but they don't have to engage because Ezreal is just like 1v5ing the game. So it's like you only, I mean, one thing that Inspire talked about on an episode of the Sackdown was how you only really need a couple people playing the game, and you need everyone else like holding the spells and keeping formation to allow the strong person to like do what they need to do to win the game, right? Like you only need one or two guys playing the game, and then a lot of people's jobs are to hold their spells so the other guys can't play the game on the other side. So I feel like Asian teams really understand that when they have a fed Ezreal, the way that they use like a fed AD carry, and even if you talk to Korean players, right? Like I played with Korean players, and the way that they talk about it is they're like, that's the 1D, like that's the one dealer, which is like the top damage dealers. Like you have to protect him. Like that is like
One
the
deal
main
is the name for AD carry in Korean. Yeah, one deal.
Yeah. So they say like, oh, it's the 1D, it's the one. Like we have to fucking play around like this guy. Like he is like the core of our team fight. Like we have to make sure that we protect him. We have to make sure that he can always hit. The whole game revolves around your AD carry once you get to like mid to late game. And I feel like this is understood in NA and EU, but not to the same degree. Like they don't play around it. Around these conditions to the same degree. Like everyone else is still trying to have like autonomy and play the game themselves, where it's like, nope, your job is to just stand in front, tether to your own AD carry. Your AD carry has skill shots like to walk up, like Ezreal wants to queue, you walk up, you allow him to hit the turret. Okay, he wants to back off now you back off with him. Like you play that tether game with him constantly. So at that point in the game, the Ezreal is just a huge fucking problem. There's no one that can tank the Ezreal on the enemy team, and G2 can't engage. So like that is just a game ending fight. Like the game will end like that 100 times out of 100. Like maybe I'll say 99 times out of 100. Maybe like Elk has a stroke 1 out of 100 times and he just kills himself, and then you somehow win. But at that point, the game is effectively over once BLG wins that fight mid lane.
Yeah, and that example is pretty clear, as it looked like G2 were going to win the fight. You had multiple members down on BLG, but it was because they allowed Elk to push out so much damage safely when it was time for him to come and clean up.
Right. Basically, like the range advantage was really huge for BLG, right? So as long as you send your front line into the meat grinder there and just let Ezreal go to work, like you can kill the front line with G2's composition. But the problem is, what do you have left to actually deal with Ezreal, and how do you kill him? You know, with this composition, how do you get on top of him?
Yeah,
you can't.
Like you basically just have a timing window during Terracult. And then other than that, it's like, well, I hope we killed everybody, because if we didn't, that Ezreal, we have no way to kill that Ezreal afterwards.
Yeah, and I think the strength of BLG generally, which you saw in this game. So I think BLG got heavily outdrafted in this third game. I think that they should have lost this third game because there's a long time until Ezreal can actually become that threat. And in the other parts of the game, I think that G2's comp is very anti-melee, and you have 4 melees on the other side. So I think that this was a game where, you know, G2, like, they fucked up the Baron. The Baron was good. Okay. I reviewed it a bunch of times. The Baron is actually a good Baron by G2. They just made the wrong decision. You don't turn there, you just finish the Baron. You have to realize how strong
they
Rise
got
and
it down to
Kalista are.
like 5,000, and with Rend
5K?
and with Rise like actually hitting it probably, you're right, probably would have gone.
Rumble has no ult. Silas has no flash. Like, Rumble has no flash. They can't 3v5 you there. They don't have the tools to 3v5 you as long as you just finish the Baron. And if you look at how fast they're doing the Baron, they got 9k damage off the Baron in the first 9 seconds. So and their damage is backloaded because they have Kalista Ren plus Smite, right? So they only need like 2 or 3 more seconds. Yeah, like around 3 seconds they can finish the Baron. And the Rumble just, like, his Q was on cooldown. The Rumble walked up, he threw his like Q, like he chunked Mickey to like half. Just keep on hitting the Baron, just keep on healing people with Herrick. And sure, some people are probably going to die. You probably like sacrifice 1 or 2 to the Baron, but the Rise doesn't die, the Kalista doesn't die, and most likely the Xin doesn't die either. So you're probably able to just save Baron on 3-4 members, then you just play your Baron buff with the remaining 2 minutes of the Baron after everyone respawns.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one that's gonna. That's the thing I saw the most on Twitter in terms of like the most regret. It was like, damn, it was that Baron call, and I'll have a long off season to think about it, but that felt super close, like very,
Yeah,
very
well,
close.
my understanding is that they thought that Bin had used his Rumble TP, his TP at the dragon fight that they won in order to, try for that Baron. So I think probably what happened is they just freaked out when they saw the Rumble at that fight and panicked and turned instead of finishing, because
Yeah.
they probably had a different call going on. They're like, what the fuck is Rumble doing here?
Hmm.
I think that's probably what happened. But you
Yeah,
can't
so,
have
like-
that. You can't lose your head like that in a qualification match, right? Qualification game.
Yeah. Well, another great year by G2. Domestically, goes a little short internationally, and they fall short. Shout out to G2, all their fans, and of course, the social media entity that always checks out our channel, just like you all should. And while you're there, make sure to like and subscribe. Oh, geez. It'll be interesting to see what they do and how they reload for next year. Now, 2 more segments left in today's episode, but before we get to it, it's time to remind you about our friends over at Factor, as they've been a long-standing supporter here of Power Spike. Now, sweater weather pairs perfectly with savory fall foods, but with your busy schedule, sometimes it's hard to eat the way that you like to. That's where Factor comes in. Their chefs do the shopping and the chopping to bring you fresh, never frozen, fully cooked meals right to your doorstep. All you have to do is heat and eat. All their meals are dietitian approved, so you know you're getting the nutrition you need with all the fall flavors you crave. And when it comes to meals, everyone wants the same thing: options. That's why Factor offers 35 wholesome meals every week, including the Gourmet Plus, Keto, Calorie Smart, Vegan and Veggie, so you will always find something that you love that suits your lifestyle. Don's been using it forever. Again, got to share that with Yamato when he came. You've heard us talk about it over and over again. Don, what is your favorite part of using Factor?
I mean, the thing that I enjoy now is like it feels like they're coming out with new meals at a much higher rate, and the new meals are like always quality. So like there was a garlic butter and chicken thighs one I got recently that was really good. And yeah, I mean the consistency is just really high level. I mean, I haven't had a Factor meal that I thought was bad. And one thing that I think has improved, because I've been using it for years now, is like a lot of the fish meals are
Yeah.
way better than they were before. Like there used to be a little bit of a fishy taste, and now I feel like they've just gotten better at cooking it, or just being able to package it in a way where you don't have that anymore. So I feel like the consistency and the quality is really high with Factor meals. Like, I mean, I had one literally 3 minutes before the show was on. I ate a Factor meal. I had a sun-dried Parmesan chicken penne right before we got online.
Nice.
Yep, for breakfast. I was figuring I'm gonna be doing this, and then I have to stream after. So I was like, you know what? It'll hold me like 6 hours. Like that's what I need right now. Just a small, like a normal breakfast, like a breakfast sandwich. It's not gonna hold me for the amount of time I need.
Boom. Well, there you have it. You've heard us talk about Factor for such a long time now. And if you haven't joined, now is a great time. Head on over to factormeals.com/powerspike50 and use the code powerspike50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. That's code powerspike50 at factormeals.com/powerspike50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. Thanks to our friends over at Factor for powering Power Spike. Now, let's move on over to the TL timeline. Again, NA fans that want to commiserate and EU fans that want to hate on NA. Now's the time to salivate and jump on in. It's time for a little bit of keeper kick. And yes, you guessed it. The 2 most lovable players on TL. Are we getting rid of Core, Impact? No, fuck that. We're talking about APA and UmTi. Let's get to it. This week's keeper kick. Yeah, I mean, UmTi, I guess, as Dom said, lovable loser, APA, smack talker that doesn't back it up,
People
picks
don't even
Kled
like
and gets
UmTi
fucking
anymore.
just destroyed. No, I love my boys. I love them. I'm
like
doing it for the
UmTi.
content. They know this. I love them
All
both. But
By the way, I did think, back to the 40% win rate thing, Tom. When I was watching that interview, and they were joking about it, and he's like, "Well, my Nocturne win rate is only 40%, but that's pretty good because my career win rate is 40%." I actually was like, when was the last time UmTi even played Nocturne? It was 2019.
oh shit.
Yep.
And I was like, why are they even bringing this up on the broadcast? Like, hey, UmTi, your Nocturne win rate is 40%, but the last time you played it before this game versus GAM was 5 years ago. And also, if we're going to criticize him, he actually looked way better on the Nocturne than the Maokai game. So like maybe we shouldn't be going after him for a champion he hasn't played professionally in 5 years. I don't know. I thought that was a weird choice. I thought it was a weird choice to bring up.
Fun question, just angled.
I mean, I feel like UmTi is the guy who's like okay with like, it's like, UmTi, you fucking suck. He's like, yeah, I know, but I'm still here. Like he's like that type of guy. So he's just somebody who responds to it well. Where if you said that to like somebody else, they would look at you with a death stare.
Yeah, I agree with that. Both these guys, again, I think underperformed, and I think they underperformed. Like maybe UmTi performed to what we thought, and APA underperformed, but. Let's talk about their performance here, and then you can go into why you'd keep, why would you kick. Monty, let's start with you.
Okay, well, look, I'm not going to sit here and justify UmTi's performance at Worlds, but I do think that over my years of watching UmTi and watching the terrible performance of Brian, at least I will say this about UmTi. He actually has had clean early games and pathing, and he was able to do things for Brian. And I do also believe that he must be contributing to a certain degree in terms of Team Liquid's shot calling, and therefore is at least partially responsible for the good macro that Team Liquid had. Whereas with APA, I feel like this guy is just never going to be the guy on the international stage. He kind of just tripped his way through a bunch of metas that were very, very suitable to his champion pool. And I think he got kind of lucky that we were in an Aurelion Sol, then Ziggs, and now we're Tristana. Tristana or Talia metas. But like it felt like even though he has played Tristana and he has played Ahri in the past, and these are fringe meta picks at this World Championship, the way that Team Liquid was drafting. And they were, the FlyQuest versus Team Liquid series was obviously very strange in the fact that there was a lot of Yone and Aurora falling all the way through the draft. You really wonder if this team is actually as meta-proof as they need to be. And even in some of these other comps that Team Liquid was running, we often saw just positional mistakes, particularly on Syndra, or not knowing first off, just like all-inning with Flash and in some of these games that they could have potentially beat the Asian teams, not being able to be there on time or mechanically execute the Nico flank that they needed, in some of these critical earlier games that they have, and then playing in this last match and just completely not showing up on the Syndra, getting picked off repeatedly, and then having, the Kled come out because it feels like they're not confident in their ability just to take the power picks in this meta. So I don't know. Like for me, APA, I just don't see a world where he is going to be consistently the high level player that they need in the mid lane. And especially when they have an import slot open, it feels like they could almost certainly do better, right? Like, why is he losing to Quad, Chovy's bench player? Like, he shouldn't be getting clapped by Quad in Quad's first LCS season. Like that's not an acceptable result. And I also just don't think that APA is one of the major voices who is contributing to their in-game shot calling, which is seeing them have success. Like I just have to believe that that's Impact, UmTi, and Core JJ. Right. So like it feels as though you can probably switch APA out, but you got to get rid of him. Like you are now losing finals to FlyQuest and Quad, and you are now losing your World's quarterfinal spot to Quad. That this can't continue. You have an import slot. Use it.
That's an interesting thing because for the longest time, it's felt like we valued the import slot, right? Oh, he's a native player.
Especially for mid laners.
Yeah, I know. A guy that can do it and has shown up and has had performances. You go back.
And you can't get Jojo because he's going to Mad Lions, I guess. So there you go. This is the
damn. If you got Jojo, your Koreanification of your roster.
Exactly. It actually was. Jojo actually was the pickup for them, especially because I think that with a more robust coaching staff, Jojo could have succeeded. I think when you had a lot of structure around Jojo, just based on what the EG coaches have said, he was doing much better. And I think in Cloud9's year where they just had one coach, that it probably wasn't the best way to do this for him. And also, I think Peter Dunn and Spawn are much more, they're older, more mature, more emotional. Like they can manage the emotions of players, I think, better. And I just don't think that, Mythy was that kind of guy on Cloud9. So I can see why, some of these, or Reapered, potentially was that kind of guy. So I think you need more support around him. But
I think we kick UmTi. I think UmTi, the thing about APA is like, sure, he failed at this Worlds, but if you look at every other like portion of the year, like if you look at how he played in spring and like his performance at EWC, where he's literally just like playing better than Faker at EWC, and UmTi's just griefing that game for no reason. And it's like MSI, you have APA be effective. He's outlaning people like Humanoid. He's solo killing Humanoid. Like I think that he's shown enough in his early career that you could believe in his potential and his ability to learn. Like he was originally like a Talia Aurelion Soul player, right? So he got hit in the face with the meta in spring. And the question was, when the meta shifted, how effective was he going to be? And I think that he was somebody that proved in summer that he could be effective in another meta. He was able to learn how to side lane. He was able to be really effective in a different way and give a different feel to the team. And sure, he had a bad Worlds, but like for me, UmTi, I'm like, part of the thing is that Monty is saying here is like, the reason why UmTi is good is because he has like pretty good early game plans. Yeah. You know where he's not good is mid to late game. Why? Because when you're playing on Breon, you don't play many mid to late games. So he doesn't have experience in the mid to late game to actually not int. It's just like he's such a loose player and he's such a frustrating player to watch because it feels like he's always
him
on the verge.
Walking into grubs without his teammates.
I mean, he's such a anxiety producing player to watch. Like you always feel like he's on the verge of inting the whole game. You're always like, UmTi, calm down. Like don't int. Like having this feeling with a player who's supposed to be a fucking veteran. Like this is a veteran player. Like this is somebody who's not going to get much better. It doesn't feel like UmTi's changed much this year. Like sure, he's playing in like an easier region and he's playing with better teammates, even though they are, NA teammates. Like they are just better than the teams that he played with. So he's able to get through a lot of the situations that he was not able to get through domestically. And sure, his early game is fine, but he also just has tons of mechanical flubs. He seems like very unconfident of himself. Like he doesn't seem like a confident player. In big moments, it does feel like he just plays worse. Like gets stressed, he plays worse. And yeah, I mean, he's just a perennial loser, right? Like he is somebody who's just lost over and over again for years and years and years. And it feels like he just doesn't know how to win. Like he doesn't have what it takes to really play the big moments with a level of finesse and a level of grace that you want to see from a player that's supposed to be elite. So from in my perspective, I just don't rate him highly at all. I think that UmTi is just way more replaceable. And I think APA like showed, like he gave the team a lot of depth and creativity. He gave them a lot of angles to make their team more scary. Like people are still afraid of things like the Aurelion Soul, the Ziggs. Like Ziggs is banned. Ziggs is banned the whole tournament just because like you have APA on your team. Whereas UmTi, it's like, what is UmTi good at? Like Nocturne, I guess. I mean, he's still like ulting under tier 3s and like borderline throwing like games. I don't know. Like he got the shit kicked out of him by Levi game 1.
We can actually, kick both of them and use both import slots for better players, which almost certainly levels up this roster, right?
That too.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just don't even think that that's like I feel like now we're just going the old route of just having the full Korean team. Like we're just gonna have a full Korean team Liquid that's just like a pathetic Korean team. Nice, we'll have just a bro in North America. Like that's who we'll end up having, because we're not going to be getting the top tier Korean imports. Like there's no money for that anymore. So we're just getting bro 2.0. We're getting like I mean, there may not be money in Korea for them anymore either. So we'll see. There may not be money in China for them either. If basically the rumors are the salary cap's decreasing pretty significantly. So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, maybe the Shy was onto something with his statement earlier. Go ahead, Tom. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there at the end.
I just think that UmTi is he's just not it. He's somebody who just doesn't have the elegance that you need to get yourself through situations.
I don't know, man. Having B tier Korean mid laner seems to be getting FlyQuest to quarters.
I don't think that's what got them to quarters, to be honest. Like when I
it
look
was
at the
my
team,
MVP. That's what got him there. And Whippo like playing really well. Like I think
Yeah, I mean,
Brooklow,
I think FlyQuest was just literally like more mentally stable at this event than TL. Like, I still don't actually think that they're like better than TL. That's why I didn't want to see them go forward. I think they're limited. They had some creative picks. Like, they got a win versus Hanwha Life. But Hanwha Life has been we'll talk about this later. But Hanwha Life has been so fraudulent at this tournament, and everyone just seems to like give them the pass for some reason. I don't know why.
I mean, it's because people look at the one play that came in the Genji HLE game, and they're like, "Wow, they beat Genji." It's like, yeah, they were getting mega clapped that whole game up until that point
mega
in
clapped
time.
the whole series. Like that was not a close.
It was a 3-0. It was a 3-0 and a best of 3 for Genji. They made one play. They made one hero play that won that game, and if they don't make it, Genji gets Dragon Soul and just destroys them.
Yeah, I mean, Genji just completely like strangled them out. Like that looked like how it used to look in spring in the LCK when Genji played Hanwha Life. That's how the series ended up looking. So for me, I think Hanwha Life has been pretty bad. I mean, like they got very easy draw, super easy draw. Like they got PSG into G2. They should have lost the game into G2. G2 got what, like 3 Barons. I mean, Hanwha Life completely threw that game. Then they play against Genji, get clapped by Genji effectively. And they play against FlyQuest, and they completely throw game 1. They threw game 1 super hard. Like FlyQuest should have been able to win that game. Game 2, they throw again and they lose. And then game 3, they look pretty decent. I don't understand why like Hanwha Life is considered like these mega favorites when they showed up to this tournament and they've looked sus. Like if I were to rank the teams coming out of Korea in terms of their levels of performance, Genji's been the best team. T1's been the second best team. Hanwha Life has been the third best team only because Damwon has been the fucking most disgusting team that I've seen come from Asia in so long. Like the level of like macro from Damwon, I was talking to Yamato about it. They're just giga Western. They are just a Western team.
Actually,
like when you watch this team, they look so Western. Don't they? They look like a Fnatic level team. Like they have slightly better mechanics, but if you look at their setups, like the way they play the map, it's like there is no Korean essence of their team. Like where is the fucking macro? Where is like the lane setups? Where's like the pristine, like the pristine decision making? Like none of that comes through from Damwon. They are giga Western.
I would say that it was the Super Fed LeBlanc that felt pretty Korean to me. But
I mean, it's the Super Fed LeBlanc, but like if you think about that game, it's like sure they capitalized on Weibo making misplays, but if you think about the course of the series, like Weibo looked a level up on them. Like it looked like if we kept on playing games, it's like imagine we played like a best of 11. How many games would Weibo win at that point? Or is that the only game they dropped? Because it looked like as things went on, it's like
8-3.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be
right.
something like that. Yeah, but it's like the way that it kind of looks is okay. We took away the LeBlanc. Oh, the LeBlanc was kind of creative. We took away the LeBlanc, and like Jahu's able to play the Aurora. Jahu's able to play the Yone, like so he can play the OPs. It didn't really look like Showmaker on the OPs is that great. Like his Yone is fine, but it's not amazing. Like it is part of the reason why they ended up losing to top esports. So it's like you take them off the LeBlanc and they start playing standard. Kingen was terrible the entire tournament. Moham's terrible the entire tournament. Yeah. It's like, what is the advantage of this team? So the way that I kind of look at them is like they're just really Western. They have a couple tricks. They have a couple things they play well. They remind me of those Fnatic rosters when Humanoid used to perform. I know like a couple years ago, I don't know if you guys remember this. There was some times where Humanoid was kind of performing internationally for a little bit. Yeah, never happens anymore. But now that was something that used to happen. And when you look at it, it would be
temporarily in a game, and then he just throws the game with his lead. That's the other thing that happens.
And for some reason, that's like considered like some huge. It's like look, like they got 3-0'd by Genji, but they like kind of played okay in game 1 for like 20 minutes. It's like, is that good enough? Is that the standard that we have? Like it's kind of sad that is the standard that we have. But Humanoid, for example, would play like a couple really good Azir games and it'd be like, damn. And then you just ban Azir and he was just shit, right? Like that's what would happen throughout like the group stages back in like 2022. That's how Showmaker kind of felt, where it's like you just ban out the LeBlanc. He doesn't become shit, but he just becomes not super great. And then aiming is just there. Like I don't think aiming was amazing at this tournament either. They just looked like a very muted version of themselves.
Yeah. When I
mean, they were never good in LCK, so
they looked better in like regular season.
Yeah,
I think in regular season they looked better, to be honest. Like
I've hated them this whole year, but all right.
They descaled. They definitely descaled this year.
Well, I think the things that you were looking at with them is like aiming was a really big hyper carry. Like Kingen had some creative champions, which made it hard to draft. Like if you gave him a really good Aatrox angle or like GP angle, stuff like this, he'd be able to pull it out and be effective in the game. And then now he's just like I mean, he got clapped by Breathe. Like, I don't know. Like, he's just kind of just getting clapped by everyone.
Yeah. Well, let's bring it back to TL here, just because,
APA. He's never going to be that guy. He's never going to be that guy internationally. He's not going to magically level up.
I think he could be that guy internationally.
Oh,
I think he could.
God.
He is younger. He is younger. Like, the thing is, you guys both made good points. Like,
I mean, he was that guy internationally this year. Like, at MSI, he was that guy. Like, he was playing well enough for a 1 seed NA mid laner into Faker. Like, Faker was not insane in this series.
Yes, I just think I think he's a patch Zerg, but there you go.
You both made good points about
did the same thing at EWC. Different patch, but yeah.
The youthness of both these guys, the youthness of UmTi being a winner and getting used to that. And then obviously APA still young in his career. It's 3 splits, and he's made everything, right?
I just feel like, bro, there's something about UmTi. I feel like the best players just really fucking hate losing. They hate losing more than they like winning. Like, they just have that like when they lose, and like when you see UmTi, it's like, well, guys, sucks we lost. Like, pretty sad. We try again next year. But he doesn't like hate. Like, I want him to hate losing, bro. Like, I really just want him to just really fucking hate that shit the same way you see other people hate that shit.
Yeah,
I know. You can tell that shit pisses off people like Faker. Like, Faker loses, he's like, fuck, man. Like, that's why he was banging his head against the wall, because he was like, fuck, I lost because of me. Like, it was pissing him off, and that's why he acted like that. I'm not saying that I want UmTi to bang his head against the wall, but what I'm saying is I want him to really fucking hate that shit, because I feel like that's really what drives the improvement. It's just the ability to just not be able to handle the loss. You know, it's like, fuck, that sucks.
Yeah. This is a tough one. So, friends at home, how about this? Let us know, because the current course that TL has charted out in interviews, if you haven't seen it, go watch the Sack Down here on Last Free Nation. With Spawn and, the rumors that have gone around, it is a 2-year project with buy-in from Steve, with Spawn on board. Do you want to make a move, or do you want to give them more time to grow? This isn't a Mad Lions kind of move. This isn't a G2 move. This is G2's decision from last year. So would you want to see them stay together, or do you want to see them make the move? Let us know which one, if not both, or maybe you do the Monty thing and just make TLKR, but for real this time. Let us know in the comments below.
BDD,
like
BDD is a free agent. BDD to Team Liquid.
That would be. No, I don't want to. No, I don't want to dream about that. KT, just lock his ass. Just put him in a 2-year contract. I know he's played forever. Don't do that. But also, that would be really hype. But also, I would miss not being able to talk about him in LCK anymore. But I like my job, so just stay. They'll buy more. They'll buy more banners of you, ad space of you in the subways. BDD's was the first one I saw. It was epic because for his 1,000 games, it was great. All right, so last one here. It's the Galaxy Brain Club time. Time to predict playoff bracket and winners. And in case you missed it, or you were out last week, or for some reason you didn't show up to work, maybe a podcast that you're one of the hosts on, Dom already kind of did this. But we'll hash it out because we got Monty here, and I've got some facts to kind of, at least question the future teller Nostradamus. Well, this week's Galaxy Brain Club predicting the world's playoff bracket and winner.
We actually have all the quarterfinals teams this week, and we have the matchups. Yes, so it is a little bit different.
All right, it is different. It is different. Yeah, that guy. Good jab at the run of show. That was just more of. You weren't here last time. And also, Dom said LNG were going to win for no reason other than vibes. And
they're vibing.
That is still alive. That is still alive. He also, last week, he said that the draw was going to suck and we were going to have team kills because last year's draw was pretty perfect. And I think we got a pretty good draw. So why don't we start there?
Korea can't get their 4th seed out of Swiss. So then you can't have that many team kills. It just has to be LPL killing their own region because now they They get every team out, you know, like they're a more consistent, you know, region when it goes 1 to 17, but some LCK teams peak higher, you know, it is what it is.
Say what?
I like how
The
he's
same thing
reversed
happened
the old
last year.
LPL narrative. I thought because it used to be the Korean teams would like it would just be the one Chinese team peaking, and it would be the rest of the Korean teams. I like it. I like the narrative reversal there. I enjoy it.
Well, it is just something that's super annoying that every single match, it's like, well, BLG has to lose to G2 because one Chinese team always chokes. It's like, well, last year, like every Chinese team got out. You had literally like the Chinese teams,
three Chinese teams in semis.
the only teams that the Chinese teams lost to the entire fucking time was just T1. Like T1 was just the best team at the tournament, and they just beat all the Chinese teams. Like it wasn't like people make it seem like where it's like, oh, the LCK was like so much better. It's like the fucking Weibo beat BLG in semis, and BLG beat Gen G in quarters. Like, what do you want from these guys? Like, but yeah, no, it's fine. It's just narratives as always.
Narratives. Let's dive into the matchups here. What do you make of these matchups of the draw that we got here, Monty, as we move towards the knockout stages? Finally, just what, 6 matches left? 7 matches left in the League of Legends calendar. LNG, Weibo, Hanwha Life, BLG, Top Esports T1, and of course Gen G versus KT. FlyQuest.
So it really does feel, first off, that the teams that got out in the 3-0 round, which were LNG and Gen G, got adequately rewarded for doing that, which wasn't a guarantee, obviously. So by having Weibo and Fly in there, that's what you want. Maybe the quarterfinals aren't that exciting, but you want the tournament to actually progress in excitement. And, I don't want Weibo or FlyQuest advancing beyond this first round. So that feels really good. And it feels like we got the other 2 matchups are going to be interesting, but it's almost inconceivable that we're going to have bad semifinals with this bracket, which is what you want, right? Probably, like, it depends on where you go with HLE and BLG. Like BLG has been like turning on as this tournament has gone on, and like they've been struggling internally about which jungler they want to use, right? On has not had a particularly good tournament. Like he's definitely up there in consideration for Dade Award material right now. But that said, if they find their footing, this is still an extremely dangerous team. So if they can take a few days off, get their shit together, work a little bit more with Jun, get into this next roster. It's not like Hanwha has been immortal by any means, and I think
they've been bad in comparison to how they played in LCK. They haven't been as like close to as good as what you'd expect. Losing against FlyQuest is like crazy. Like,
and also I think it's just a lot of the matchups. Like, there are some really glaring matchups like in the top lane that I think are BLG favored. So and also that we haven't had the Peanut and or Doran international choke yet, which always makes you a little bit nervous. So
I think they've had it, bro. Like I honestly think that they've had it. It just hasn't actually mattered like in the games where they've had it. Like Doran and Peanut played pretty poorly into FlyQuest the entire time. Like I would say, like there's things that are being set up by laners where they're able to like capitalize, but I would say that they have like Doran hasn't looked good. He actually did look good in LCK, like in a lot of games. He had like good games and bad games, but he's just been kind of like mediocre the entire time, I would say. Like he had a pretty bad game versus Broken Blade. I would say Broken Blade heavily outplayed him when they ended up in that match, the Jax Poppy matchup. I just thought that BB was so much more effective than Doran throughout the game. So I definitely think that Hanwha has also looked fraudulent. Like I think that this is kind of a fraud off. Like BLG's looked really fraudulent. I think Hanwha Life's looked really fraudulent. These teams are supposed to look like miles above the competition. Like in my estimation, it should have been like Gen G, BLG, Hanwha Life. Those are like clear tournament favorite. Anyone who plays against them cannot really get to play the game.
And BLG has struggled in some of these early games. PSG had to throw that game 1 for BLG to win it by overextending into that jungle. Like they had really massive advantages in all of the lanes, and they kind of just overplayed their hand. But a lot of these early games have been a struggle for BLG. So for HLE versus BLG, I think it's going to be a little bit hard to tell. I think probably I tip BLG maybe just a little bit in that one because I know what their ceiling can be and I've seen them when they play it domestically. But regardless, it's like, are we upset about like an LNG HLE or an LNG BLG semi on one side and then like a Gen G T1 or Gen G Top Esports semi on the other side? I think that feels really good.
What about FlyQuest?
No.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
do you what do you Dom, an interesting question. What is the over under in total minutes played in that series? Because
I mean,
like
I don't think
Gen G does
Gen-
some happy gaming, dude. They do some
Well,
throwing sometimes.
I mean, I just don't think Gen G is like a team that will like that rolls you quickly. Like they just like the games look mega unwinnable when you play into Gen G, but they're
Yes.
not like a game time team.
They
I've
Like
been
choke
saying
T1
you
is
this.
out,
more.
man.
I-
They
I've been
choke
I've,
you out.
I've been saying this because people get false information about Gen G because they see like a 2,000 gold difference. But what people don't understand is that the other team has no vision and no objective control, and they never get it the entire game. So it doesn't matter what the gold difference is. You literally cannot play in River against Gen
Yeah.
G. So
Yeah, I think Gen G is like Gen G is a team that I think is like really scary. You know what I've been kind of concerned about is like why did no one mention that that Gen G has just had the hardest draw of the entire tournament? Like why is that not something that anyone has been talking about? People act like we should just feel super bad for G2. Why does no one feel bad for Gen G? Like Gen G literally they
Weibo
drew,
top HLE.
yeah, they literally drew the LPL 4 seed that was actually the second best team in summer that made it to finals, right? So they drew that. Then they drew the third best team from summer, the second best team from China at this tournament.
who they also lost to at Esports World Cup.
Yep. And they had to play like a best of one then. And then they drew the LCK 1 seed. But no one's talking about
them in the finals.
Yeah, who beat them in the finals. But no one talks about like, oh, Gen G's draft was so fucking hard because yeah, I mean, I don't know. We just have some like Western bias because we're Western. It just is what it is.
Yeah, obviously
Like-
it's just us. I do like that point, and now you can clip that one forever anytime someone says Dom is an LCK hater. Not true. Especially because he hates the format more.
Oh, I just hate
So-
T1. I don't even hate the LCK. I just hate T1. Like it just is what it is. And it's like, yeah, I mean, just see how T1 fans like just go to any YouTube video that involves
Oh,
T1.
here it goes.
Go to
Checking out
like
the bingo
Yamato's
list.
go to Yamato's video when he's talking about G2 T1 and just look at the comments. It's like, the fuck is this? That's somebody who's not even like a T1 hater, by the way. That's somebody who like loves Faker, you know? Like, and you just look at the comments. It's like, if you say anything that's perceived negative about T1, you're like, oh, like Faker is not the best on Tristana Corki. They'll be like, what? He played Tristana Corki like all of summer. Like, you don't think that the GOAT has become like better at those champions after playing it? Like, it's so impossible to talk about this team. I just fucking hate talking about them because even if you do it with good analysis, like not throwing in any of like the hater bullshit, they still will like just get mad.
Shout out to the Twitter algorithm because for some reason I have to keep clicking like block and not interested. It's now showing me like T1 fan tweets from Worlds, like the For You, and some of these are just so fucking absurd. Like they're massively viewed tweets from the T1 fan base that have tons of likes all over them. That's like, look how much Owner cares about his teammates like they're his little brothers. I'm like, fuck you. Why is this a K drama that you're watching? Nobody tweets this shit about Josh Allen in the NFL. Like, look how he gazes lovingly on the other Buffalo Bills. It's like, no, nobody cares. Just win a fucking game. Can we talk about the gameplay, please? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous the way they treat them.
Yeah. I don't know. I just hate it. Like
Yeah.
it just feels so useless to like have actual discussion. It feels like it's impossible to have actual discussions. Also, even with other content creators, like everyone's so scared of the fan base that people are just afraid to like say things critical. I mean, you got to know it's bad when Wolf is considered a T1 hater by the Korean fans. Like they're like, man, this guy is not T1 biased enough. I'm like, what the fuck do you want at this point, bro? Like, actually, how could you be fucking happy over here?
That's right.
Like, it just makes no sense to me.
The I guess the background behind that for our fans here at Power Spike on the Korean like Reddit, basically, you know, Wolf said a couple of things about Faker not looking so good or something like that.
On Yone.
And they were on on
which he
Yone.
wasn't.
Yeah,
Which he
he's
wasn't.
not
Remember,
good on
he
Yone.
ulted into a wall right before a dragon fight. That is ingrained in my mind. And
Yeah.
you know, they went after him, and they have to identify T1
And-
Wolf or our Wolf, which they have now named him White Wolf. He is the White
Oh,
Wolf.
they call him Becky and Wolf, which is white guy wolf.
Oh, okay, nice.
Which is very funny.
I mean, here's the real test. We got to see the approach because for versus top esports, for T1 versus top esports, Cream has shown that he likes playing Aurora into Yone. He's one of the people that will give Yone and play Aurora into it, right? This is something that they did versus Dom1. I assume that they're going to try to do the same thing versus T1. They're gonna leave both up, try to play the matchup instead of banning both, because Cream is also an insane Yone player. Like, he was playing this a lot last year with OMG before it was really meta, where it was just really like Chovy pulling him out and Cream pulling him out, like Zika pulling him out every now and then as well. Like, those are the people that want to play Yone. What I don't understand is like how T1 fans don't know their own team better. Like, so for example, Monty, remember when I asked you this week, I was like, what champions do you think of when you think of Zeus?
Oh yeah.
And you said Nar Jace, right?
Yeah,
I
like, said Nar Jace, like Yone. I said this year, like Aatrox, Twisted Fate. You know, if we're talking about just this year, I didn't know what like era you were referring to. Gragas,
no,
also.
just overall, because I made a comment on my stream that I was getting heat for by T1 fans where I was like, he doesn't really want to play Rumble. Like, he doesn't really want to play it. Like, he'll play it if he has to, but that is not what is good for Zeus as a player. Like, one of his best qualities is how much farm he can generate in the mid game and his mechanics to be able to carry on some of these champions later on. Like, he doesn't want to be limited by a champion like Rumble or Renekton that just kind of has to be like pigeonholed into doing your job. You know, even a champion like Gragas that has way more outplay potential. You can use your mechanics, you can use your skill set.
He wants to play like weird ass champs, and like he wants to play Jace. He wants to play fucking Vayne this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I never think about him really as a Rumble player, not as like a core identifier of who he is.
Of course. And people are like, but he's 7-0 on Rumble. Guys, Rumble was broken the entire year. The reason why people were playing it, and the reason why he was even getting it, is because other teams knew he's not like, he doesn't really want to be playing that. So even if Rumble is really powerful, you give him Rumble that limits the Zeus factor in games.
Yeah.
No, if you ask me who's the Rumble guy in LCK, I would say Keen right now. I wouldn't even say Zeus, right?
Yeah. If you said like who's like the Rumble guy, and then if you said, hey, who's the, like, people will look at things, they'll be like, but he's played more Rumble than Yone in the LCK. How could you say he's more of a Yone player than a Rumble player? Yone's not fucking meta, and it's not viable in most situations. Rumble is like B1able in every single fucking game because it was broken the entire time. Now we're at, like, all the context is just lost on people. Now we're at a point of the year where Rumble is actually not that strong anymore. They've nerfed it. I mean, it's still really strong, but it's not as good as it was, right? It got nerfed multiple times, and hard fucking big ass nerfs, right? Like, they tried to kill the champion, and it's still so broken. It was so broken that it's still kind of good. But if you look at the people that are going to be playing Rumble, it's going to be the people that want to have that role. The Keens, the 369, like, those are the people that are going to play more Rumble. Bin played it. He doesn't want to play it. Zeus does not want to play Rumble. He will play it if it's good for the draft. If the enemy team, let's say we get a game versus Top Esports, I could easily see Top Esports leaving up Yone and Aurora. One side takes the Yone, so Faker will take the Yone, Cream takes the Aurora, and then Zeus plays Rumble because you want the AD and AP, you want the balance, and they complement each other well as champions. I could see that being an angle, but there's so much difference between somebody who's playing something because it's Giga OP and it's meta, and playing something that you really want to play. You know, and I feel like that is just completely lost on fans, which is, one of the reasons why I hate T1 fans. Perfect. Let's continue.
All right. Yeah, I was like, where are we going with it? Okay, cool. All right.
So why is Top Esports going to beat T1, Dom? Then?
Yes.
Because TN's the best jungler at this tournament, which is true.
He kind of has. I mean, he's looked the way that he's looked in World so far, and he's played like hard games. I mean, he played into Canyon, you know, like he's played into Owner, like he's played in the top tier players of this tournament. I just want people to realize that if you watch TN domestically, the way he looks right now is how he looks domestically. Like that is how he normally plays domestically. And that's why when he shows up to Worlds and he's just fucking terrible, it's always so confusing, because it's like, you just have mental block or what? Because you don't seem like the same player at all when we see you play. So yeah, I mean, I think that Top Esports can win, but it's always so hard for me to predict Top Esports winning a series because they just have had mental block. But I will say they have looked resilient at this tournament. They have looked like they're able, that they've like almost got it out of their system. So I think it's going to be a fucking banger series because T1's looked better and Top Esports has looked better than both of them did domestically. And they played that game earlier in the tournament. Top Esports won that game. So, you know, I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I think T1 has had better lane swaps than Top Esports, but I think Top Esports fighting has looked very Top Esports so far.
Also, I mean, this has just been an actual interesting rivalry this year, because when we have more international events, we actually get to develop more narratives. And this was the finals of Esports World Cup, right? And you know, Top Esports and T1 meeting there does give us some groundwork. And it's also cool that they met in the very first round of Swiss at this event. So like, I like the continuity we're getting. Like, I'm sad we're not getting we didn't get TL versus Fnatic. It is a giant bummer that we didn't see any NA versus EU in the actual Swiss stage, but part of that was BLG underperforming and then MDK like sucking, right, and losing to wildcard teams is why we didn't get that. I don't think that's going to be something that happens very often with this format in Worlds, but it did happen this year, so we didn't get to see some of those matchups. But it feels good that we might see it run back, and I think the best part of this bracket that we haven't even mentioned is that the Chovy Night Finals possibility exists, which is the finals we all really deserve.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. I want to see BLG playing well and it be Chovy Night in the finals. That's what I want to see.
Yeah. And on the other side, I feel like you just, when you look at the other side of the bracket, just the Chinese mid laners that are there on that side, it's Knight, it's Scout, it's Xiaohu. Like, that is just awesome. Like, I just love that of, like, again, these mid lane rivalries. If Chovy is going to get to the finals, has to go through, and T1 wins, you have to go through Faker. If Knight's going to get through the finals, you got to go through either Scout, who's made it to Worlds glow up and making LNG look so damn dominant, or Xiaohu has been the perennial powerhouse, the representative, one of the best.
Well, the MSI gods, who's the Worlds title has eluded him. I mean, even if you get LNG versus HLE in semis, like, it's a run back from the DRX match that happened between Zeka and Scout, where Scout really underperformed in that series. There's a lot of really cool.
Game 5.
I think, yeah, that's true.
Early on in the series, it was actually like the way that series was progressing was that it looked like EDG was just outclassing them. Like, game 1 and then game 2, there was that throw, and it just felt going into game 3, especially with the gold lead they built up in game 3, it just felt like it was going to be unwinnable for DRX at that point. And then they just like reverse swept. They came back in game 3, and then they got the momentum. And in game 5 was the huge like Silas Akali choke from Scout.
It's a good story though, is what I'm saying. Like, there's actually a lot to work with here, I think, in terms of previous matchups that we're gonna see in these playoffs. So it feels really good.
Is this T1 top esports match probably the match of the quarters? Like, it feels like both these squads.
Hanwha Life BLG for me. I feel like those are like two teams that were like tournament favorites, right? Like, those are the teams that should be better going in to this tournament than T1 and Top Esports.
The reason why I didn't rate them, or I didn't think about rating them as highly, is just because BLG has underperformed, and Hanwha Life, as we pointed out, has had a cream puff schedule. And I'm like, well, are they in form?
Me, look, it's LCK 1 versus LPL 1. Like, that's like, I don't know, like what, like that is literally LCK 1 versus LPL 1 compared to LPL 2 versus LCK 4.
I just think in terms of form at this event, obviously, like, Top Esports versus T1 is probably the more hype one. I mean, Top Esports, the only team that they lost to was Gen G, and they didn't have the hardest opponents in Fnatic and D+, right, in order to get out. But at the same time, they took care of business. Yeah,
they beat T1. I mean,
they beat T1, already.
That's a hard one. So I would just say that, like, the form changes quick at these events. Like, if you think about how it was with T1 going into the quarterfinals,
like they didn't look good in Swiss last year. It was when they hit quarters that they just went Super Saiyan.
When they 3-0'd LNG, people were like, "Oh shit, they might do it. Like, it might actually be a good match versus JDG." That's
only the T1 fans will sell you that it was like inevitable that T1 was going to win last year, but they looked ropey in Swiss. They looked real ropey.
They should have lost to TL. Like, their game 1 was like horrible into TL. The second game they play against Gen G, they got the shit kicked out of them versus Gen G. Like, even with lead, even with Peanut like inting on the Kazakhs, it still didn't really look like they could play against Gen G at all. So, like, they ended up getting out. They ended up taking care of business later on, but they didn't look good until quarterfinals. I feel like form changes really quick at these tournaments. And that's one of the things that's scary about T1 is, like, because it's a tournament format like this and they're so comfortable here compared to other teams, like, is that going to be something that they can lean on? They can, like, remember, like, okay, this is what our approach was. When we felt like this at this point in the tournament, this is how we fixed it. Like, having those experiences could be something to lean on.
Sure, but when you describe how T1 were, that when I think of a team out of these 8, that reminds me of BLG. I mean, BLG... Like, that game 3 it feels like I love watching boxing highlights and just watching boxing. It felt like the heavyweight champ was fucking wobbling, had dropped once, maybe the first time in their career, and all of a sudden they're up and they're on the ropes against this, prospect who's great and has a lot of accolades, but this is the heavyweight champ, and then they end up clutching it out. That is what last year's T1 run at this point reminds me of. It's BLG. Like, all right, they made it through. They're at the quarterfinals. They're comfortable here. Non-title fights, they only go, however many rounds, 8 rounds, but a title fight is 12 rounds. And now they're in that, 9th round where, okay, cool. This is where they show that they're champs. So we'll see. The match that we haven't fully talked about yet is LNG and Weibo. And then we'll go through predictions. What do you make of both these squads making it on in here? LNG just being dominant, and the scout factor / all that drama that was coming on in. It feels like that was such a long time ago with them qualifying on in as a 3-0 team here, Dom.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is an interesting matchup. I think that people are more skewed. Like, people think it's more LNG skewed than it actually is. Like, these teams had a close best of 5 in summer that Weibo ended up winning. And the second one, I keep on reminding people, but the second one where LNG 3-0'd Weibo, that's the day after finals where Weibo just lost to BLG. So it's like LNG has just done all their prep for Weibo, just assuming that Weibo's going to lose to BLG. And Weibo is sitting there prepping to beat BLG because they're trying to win the LPL. So I wouldn't say that's like a very good indicator of the strength of the teams. One thing that I want to bring up is when you've had your backs against the wall like Weibo multiple times throughout the tournament, I do think like that does strengthen you in a way. It allows you to play your best. I think Weibo's looking a little bit shaky in the earlier games, but I think they showed something when they lost that first game to Fnatic, and the way they lost like game 1 to Dom1, where they had a lot more poise in the previous games where, I think that does give you some ability to show who you are. Like the clutch factor is there.
Xiaohu also has looked better the longer the tournament has gone on as well. I think Crisp has been underperforming, which has been kind of true for a while. Light still looks really good. Breathe has looked fantastic at this event, and so has Tarzan. So there are some definite strengths on this Weibo roster. I look at LNG and like Zika's been doing pretty well. Scout obviously has been popping off, but I think there are questions about potentially, not historically, but at this particular event, given the circumstances, the depth of Scout's champion pool. And good meta for Gala, obviously. I still think I'm tipping LNG here. Like, this is a team that does have a sense, like a certain cohesiveness to it that I think Weibo has lacked. But there's still that outside possibility. But I would take LNG here.
Yeah, I mean, like pretty much what I'm saying is so like right now it's like 120 to like 380 odds like going into this, and I would think it's more like 140 270. Like Weibo can win. Like it wouldn't be inconceivable to me if Weibo won. Like they have shown stuff at this tournament. Like I think Xiaohu like has the ability to play Yone. His Aurora is actually pretty good. I really liked the Morgana counterpick to the Vi. I thought that was very clever into Dom1. They completely
They're pulling the LEC, man. They're pulling the LEC.
I mean, they're doing it, but yeah, I mean, I just think that Weibo is actually they're not as bad as everyone is making them out to be. Like people are acting like they're giga fraudulent. Like they're kind of fraudulent, but their fraudulency comes from like just showing up randomly and playing worse than expected. Like their inconsistency, rather than like when they're playing games of League of Legends where they're in it. It does look like they're actually like they have a lot of good setups. Like they understand how to like play the map. Tarzan is very smart about how they play around objectives. Like he's somebody who leads the team in terms of coming to like grub rotations and dragon setups and stuff like that. They do have quality to their play. They're not like Dom1 where you just don't have the setups, and it's like they can play well like individually and that's all you're relying on. Weibo does have macro to fall back on. They are not like some just garbage team.
Well, now's the time for my useless dGon's fact of the week, sponsored by no one, coming on in. And I took this one from Reddit just because it was good. The team that has beaten the LPL number 3 seed has gone on to win Worlds every time. It is so for not every time, for the last, I think like 5 years. It's like 5 or 6 years. That's going back to Damn One Gaming. So you're looking pretty good if you're on that side of the bracket, and with the opportunity. So if you're a Weibo fan or Hama Life fan or BLG fan, there's your opportunity to do it. I think if you go back to Damwon, it was against Suning, who was the number 3 seed. They beat them in the finals, but other than that, before that, so it's still the number 3 seed. When they've lost, that team that has beaten them has won. So keep your eye on that. If Weibo and all the Weibo fans want revenge for last year's finals runner-up, that would be the way to do it. And then lastly, let's just do a quick touch on it for the NA Hopium. What's the angle? I know that the Dive was doing this. The Dive, Kobe brought up this fun game of like, if you were chefs over at FlyQuest, what pick would you have surprise come out so that you could catch Genji off surprised for one game out of a best of 5? But like, what's the way on in here? What's the Hopium take here, Dom? Monty, you go first.
What? There is no Hopium take.
Okay, that's why I went Dom first, because I was like, maybe Dom will play the game.
It's Chovy just beating up his like bench nephew from the DRX days. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's a pretty good storyline.
If you want to talk about wacky picks, Keen isn't going to be rattled by fucking Whippo's wacky picks because Keen is that guy. He's like the stable version of Whippo.
I think what you pick is you pick Trundle, because then you remind Canyon of the time where he picked Trundle in Game 5 versus EDG and lost the finals of Worlds. So you just get in his head by the Trundle lock-in. You just start dancing in his face like the time to troll type thing, and then you just hope the Canyon tilts from it. That's your only hope.
It's less about sneaky pick catching him off guard and more about the mental warfare, flashing the different logos. That obviously did not help for APA when he was flashing the FlyQuest logo on Kled. But we'll see if there's any way forward. 3-0s all around. Over, under, let's see. Okay, if it's a 3-0, let's give an average of 100 minutes. Over, under 100 minutes of the series.
Under 100 minutes. The question
is
100
under. 100 under.
Yeah. The real question is, dGon, is it 90 under? That's the tricky one.
No way.
I think it's over 90, because I think that like Genji's the type of team where they won't close you out like as hard as possible.
They also troll. They also happy game. So I think over 90, under 100 total.
I think there'll be a couple at least like 32, 33 minute Genji wins where they like have zero chance of losing, but they just close it out.
Let's see who can get the closest.
35, 27, 27. How much?
I pick 96 total minutes. What do you guys pick?
96 total minutes.
35.
32 minutes per game. 32-minute average game time.
Oh, I'm under by 1 minute.
I'll go over. I think maybe FlyQuest will drag it out one game. Like Genji will happy gamer. They just won't know what one of the champions does that FlyQuest picks. And
he's gonna pick Cassiopeia, and it's gonna go late.
Yeah.
Like that's what's gonna happen, and it's gonna drag that game out to like 35 minutes. That's it.
All right,
the Dragons are gonna stack. All right. Okay. Well, with that, all right, picks real quick. Dom, what do you got for picks here? All the way through, Dom, Monty. Let's start at the top here. LNG Weibo score.
3-1 LNG.
All right.
I'll go 3-2 BLG. Ooh, 3-2 T1, 3-0 Genji.
I got the same, except I'll have 3-2 LNG. I think we're getting a lot of Sosas and bangers here.
All right. Bangers all the way around until we get to the last match of the week. Is the schedule out already? Yeah.
It goes Thursday LNG Weibo, Friday Hanwha BLG, Saturday top T1, and then Sunday is Genji.
Oh, they're saving the best for last.
Saving the best for last.
So that means North America will get 5th place at this tournament. They'll be the last quarterfinal team eliminated.
I wonder why they did that. All the other ones that they did made sense in terms of viewership, but this time they just went, this is the draw, this is how it's going to go.
Yeah, because it's just top to bottom in the bracket, basically.
All right. Well, with that said, that ends this week's Galaxy Brain discussion. We'll be back next week to cover what happened in those 4 matches, break down the semifinals, and get a step closer to closing out the year. Can you believe it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 matches left in the 2024 calendar. We'll have you covered. Again, co-streams right there with Dom, Monty doing bangers only. Make sure to like and subscribe while you're there. Also, a lot of football action happening. Make sure to follow all the different channels that we have. If you like sports, we got sports. You like
Shout
culture,
out
we got
to
culture.
Devontae Adams, who just got traded to the Jets while we were on
Yeah.
this show.
That's dumb. It's a different color of Green Bay green over in New York. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you guys next week for more Power Spike.